The thing about humanity that no alien civilization ever understood, not really, not until it was too late, was that humans did not separate their scientists from their soldiers. Every other spacefaring civilization did. It made sense on paper. Scientists were thinkers, soldiers were fighters, different skills, different temperaments, different training. You kept them in separate buildings and gave them separate budgets and let them do their separate things and occasionally made them talk to each other through 17 layers of bureaucracy. Humanity had tried that for about 200 years. Then they had looked at the results and decided it was one of the things they had ever done, which was saying something, because humans had done genuinely stupid things on a scale that still made historians wince. So they had changed it. Every Earth Defense Command officer had a scientific specialization. Every research station had a defense component. Every ship carried people who could both run the experiment and, if necessary, defend it with their lives. Not because war and science were the same thing, but because the people who understood how something worked were always going to be better at breaking it than people who did not. Admiral had a doctorate in quantum materials engineering. She had also, in her 30-year career, been in 11 combat engagements, survived 4 of them by methods that her official reports described as improvised solutions under pressure, and her unofficial accounts described in considerably more colorful terms. She was, by any reasonable metric, exactly the wrong person to send to a diplomatic summit. She was also exactly the right one. The Dominion had requested the summit, politely, almost nervously, which was unusual for a civilization that had held military superiority in this region of space for 600 years. They had a problem, a specific, technical, immediate problem that was going to kill approximately 9 billion of their people within 18 months if it was not solved. Their best scientists had been working on it for 3 years. They had made no progress. They had, in desperation, reached out to every advanced civilization within range. Most had sent diplomats. Earth had sent. She arrived at the station alone, which was the first thing that surprised them. She arrived 12 hours early, which was the second. She spent those 12 hours in the room they had given her, not resting, not preparing diplomatic remarks, but reading every piece of technical data they had sent in advance with the focused intensity of someone who had already decided the answer was in there somewhere and was simply looking for it. When the summit began and the science director, a careful, precise man named, began his formal presentation of the problem, interrupted him 4 minutes in. "I'm sorry," she said. "Can you go back to that slide, the third one?" Went back. "This measurement here," said, pointing. "Your team flagged this as an anomaly and set it aside. Why?" Blinked, because it fell outside the expected parameters. It was inconsistent with our theoretical model, so you assumed your model was right and the measurement was wrong, said. A long pause. "Oh yes," said. Looked at the measurement for a moment. Then she pulled out a small device and started calculating something. The room waited. The delegation exchanged glances. Several of them had expected a human admiral to begin with security guarantees and resource negotiations and a careful diplomatic framework for cooperation. None of them had expected her to immediately find the thing their own scientists had missed for 3 years. "Your model is wrong," she said, not unkindly. "Not completely wrong, the framework is sound. But you built it on an assumption about how your star's magnetic field interacts with the planetary core, and that assumption has been off by a factor of about 3 since your last major solar event 12 years ago. The anomaly your team set aside was not an error. It was your data trying to tell you that your model needed updating." She looked up. "The good news is that means the problem is smaller than you think. The bad news is the solution is going to require a complete rebuild of your planetary shielding approach from the ground up." Stared at her. "You have been here for 12 hours, he said. 12 and a half, she said. "Can I see the full data set, not the summary, the raw numbers?" What followed was not a diplomatic summit. It was, depending on who you asked, either the most unusual scientific collaboration in history or the most productive 18 days anyone on that station had ever experienced. Did not do diplomacy. She did not do careful relationship building or strategic ambiguity or the careful dance of revealing just enough to build trust while holding back enough to maintain leverage. She had been told, before leaving Earth, to be diplomatic. She had nodded in a way that her commanding officer had recognized, with resignation, as the nod of someone who has heard a thing and immediately filed it under interesting but impractical. She gave the everything, every relevant piece of Earth's research on quantum shielding, stellar magnetic interactions, and planetary core dynamics. Immediately, without negotiation. Because the 9 billion people were going to die in 18 months, and that fact made the careful dance feel obscene to her. In exchange. Not as a negotiated exchange, just as the natural result of working together on something difficult that gave her everything too. Not because they had agreed to. Because it turned out that when you stopped the diplomatic performance and just worked on the problem, information flowed in both directions naturally. On day 6, made a discovery that had nothing to do with the original problem. A pattern in the data that suggested something interesting about a phenomenon that Earth scientists had been puzzling over for decades. She told about it immediately. He stared at her. This could be valuable to your civilization. It's valuable to everyone, she said. That's the point. Can we talk about it after we solve your immediate crisis? I have about 14 follow-up questions. On day 11, one of the junior scientists, a young woman named Sever who had barely spoken in any of the formal sessions, came to with a calculation she had been afraid to show her superiors because it contradicted the official approach. Read it in 4 minutes, then she looked up. This is right, she said. It contradicts director's framework, Sever said quietly. Yes, it does, said. Good, let's go tell him. Sever looked alarmed, just directly. He's a scientist, said, standing up. He wants to solve the problem. He's not going to be angry that you found a better way, and if he is, he's in the wrong job. She paused. Is he in the wrong job? No, Sever said after a moment. No, he genuinely wants to solve it. Then let's go. Was not angry. He was quiet for a long time, looking at Sever's calculation. Then he looked at the young scientist, who had apparently been sitting on this for 2 weeks, and said simply, Why didn't you bring this forward sooner? Sever glanced at. Said nothing, she did not need to. On day 18, the solution was complete. Not a partial solution, not a framework for future research. A complete, tested solution that the engineering teams could begin deploying within the month. 9 billion people were going to be fine. The formal summit closing ceremony was brief, gave a careful diplomatic speech about cooperation and shared futures and the benefits of interstellar collaboration. It was a good speech. Sat through it with the patience of someone who understood that ceremonies mattered to people, and that was reason enough to respect them. Afterward, when the delegations were dispersing, found her standing at the station's observation window looking at the stars. I want to ask you something, he said. Go ahead. You gave us everything immediately. No negotiation, no framework, no guarantees. He paused. Why? Looked at the stars for a moment. 9 billion people, she said. That's why. She was quiet for a second. We spent a long time on Earth doing the careful dance, holding things back, negotiating leverage. We know exactly where that leads because we did it to each other for thousands of years. She glanced at him. It leads to 9 billion people dying while everyone negotiates who gets credit for saving them. Said nothing. We decided a while back, she said, that we were done with that approach. She turned from the window. Turns out when you just help without the performance, people help back, not always, but enough. She picked up her bag. Tell Sever she should have brought that calculation forward on day 1, she said. She's the best scientist on your station. She should know that. She paused at the door. And fix your junior researcher feedback system. You almost missed the answer because someone was afraid to speak up. That's a systems problem, not a people problem. She left. Stood at the window for a long time after. Behind him, somewhere in the station, 9 billion people were going to keep existing. In front of him, the stars were very numerous and very old and full. He was beginning to understand, of problems that needed solving. He thought about what it said. Just help without the performance. He thought it might be the most radical thing anyone had ever said to him. He also thought she was probably right.